What is good, guys? In this video, you will learn how to absorb books like a sponge. So, I think that after all the experience of me reading books, that I do have some form of say in reading, and I've tried all types of reading, like highlighting, underlining, note taking, typing. I have literally done it all. And in this video, I've compiled essentially what I think is the best way to remember what you have read, especially in educational books. But I'm talking about self help books and educational books in this video. But this could also apply to schooling, to university, to preparing for tests, whatever it may be. This video will talk about it all. Nonetheless, guys, let's get right into it. So, essentially, what got me to get to this final product of memorization and absorbing things as a sponge is that, like many of you guys, I believe, I want to remember as much as possible of what I read. Like, we're reading for a couple hours on one book, sometimes even upwards of 5 to 6 hours. And it's important that we remember as much or remember the main points of a book as much as humanly possible, because that way we're able to get the most out of that book that we want to apply in our lives, whether it be business books or even just self-help books that improve our daily lives, mental health actions, whatever it may be. Taking action is the main point of these books for the most part, or just educating. But nonetheless, by memorizing and remembering exactly the main points in a book, it helps a lot to remember what is in those books. Anyways, guys, to break down the best way to do so, I must say what doesn't work for remembering what you read. And then we'll get into the things that do work. So I hate to burst your bubble, but highlighting words doesn't do shit for remembering. I have done this a lot. I have read the books that I have read and that I used to highlight. That was the first thing, right? Like, I would highlight just words that I thought were important. Like, oh, this is important. Let me just highlight this sentence. I've done that. It doesn't work. You think you're going to go back to it. This also goes for highlighting. But simply just highlighting something, if you think about it, you're just reading over the thing again. So that doesn't really work, and it's not that effective. Because, again, if you think about it, you're simply just putting a line under a word and thinking that it's important, so you may read it again. It does not work. Like, I can't remember a single thing that I've highlighted based off my memory. Like, if you ask me what's in this book and it was a book that I highlighted words in, no clue. Really, no clue. And this also goes for underlining. Now, I've also tried other formats like typing up what I've read and looking at summaries, watching videos on the topic of the book, like looking at summaries after I read the book. That kind of works. Like, I've seen people who actually found benefit in looking at summaries, and I do think that's good. And if you're doing this right now, good for you. But there's another way that could actually help you even better. And I think, and now we'll get into how you can actually absorb books as like a sponge and do it properly. And the only way that I've found to remember what you read and the important things from books is to simply take notes with your own words. Like, you're reading the book, right? Let's say you're reading, I don't know, I have the Quran here, but let's say you're reading a book. As you were reading, whether it be an important thing or you're just like you have an idea about the book and like you think you can summarize it pretty well, maybe after a couple pages, or let's say you found something important, literally just summarize what you have read. Let's say it's like the page or whatever the important thing, summarize it in your own words. Because what that gets us to do it gets the benefit from note taking as well as highlighting. Because if you think about it, again, I talk shit about highlighting. There is some benefit to it because you're reading over again, as I said, but you also want to write it down in your own words. And what that gets you to do is that you're thinking about the thing you just read. And when you start to think about it and you put it into different situations in your mind, literally think about it. It's literally training yourself to think of something that you've read in a different way, in a different form. And what that gets you to do is that it gets you to delve deeper into the topic. And by delving deeper into that topic that you just read, it'll help you memorize it in some way or fashion that is just unmatched. And even to put on top of that and to even add more value, you're writing it down. So you're thinking about it in a different way and you're jotting down the things that you have read. So that in of itself just adds even more understanding onto the topic because you have to articulate yourself. You have to think of it in like a good way so that you can write it down. And I have found that doing this is just so effective when it comes to reading. And literally, I've been doing this for since January. Like, I started this January and I've been reading for around 2 years. This method of note taking in my own words and summarizing what I have read, in addition to maybe underlining a couple words, like highlighting like the book, like putting the bend on the top thing. Those are fine. Like, okay, you remember maybe something. But the real way, again, guys, is to literally note take. And I have my notebook right here. It's like I got this in like a dollar store. It's really cheap, guys. It's full of value. And what I do, and you guys, this is an optional step now. But once I have taken notes down and I've written it, after a couple of days, maybe on like a day off, I go onto Notion or a note taking app and I literally type it. I type up what I've read again. And that kind of like, it's like acts as the cement, like the glue, where I've taken what I've read and I'm like kind of doing it again. I'm summarizing again, but typing it up this time. And so what happens is that I literally read, I've summarized it in my own words in my mind first, then I've written it down so then I clarify even more, and then I'm typing it up to add on top of what I've learned, maybe even more of what I've learned. So if you want to absorb any type of educational content like a sponge, guys, this is the way to do it. And I'm not kidding. Try it out, do it once or twice, and I promise you guys, that one book that you did that with, and it's gonna be just you're gonna remember and you're gonna like apply it easily because you're gonna remember it during your day. You're like, oh yeah, I can do this. Or like you're like, let's say you read a book on talking or learning or simply just socializing. You're like, oh yeah, I took this. Okay, I know this. I can do this. It's really easy. It's something unmatched. And what people tend to forget is doing that gives you an advantage because some people literally just read books and forget about it. And they kind of think that they're taking action or they're learning, but they're really not. Anyways, guys, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and please let me know if this helped you guys because this sort of thing really helped me in my reading career. And I know that this takes a little bit longer to read. Like, sure, it's gonna take up like an extra, I don't know. You're literally writing down a couple sentences from what you learned. Maybe you write like a whole page of what you've remembered, but just do what you can. And if you really want to get ahead and really learn, I think this is the best way possible.